Thank you for joining us for this panel session on digital schools, the rise of fully online education. Heather Rhodes, the principal of Harrow School Online, will be moderating this session. Do ask your questions using the live discussion box next to the presentation window. Enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Shamala, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you're as excited as I am about our topic, the rise of online education. For me, I feel that online education is one of the most innovative areas to be working in within education at the moment, which means that the 5 panelists today, who are all founders or leaders within online schools across the globe, 5 of the most exciting people I could be introducing you to. Educational technology has given us all opportunities to reconsider what powerful learning and good schooling looks like, both for our fully online schools, and we'll talk more through that in this session today, but also hopefully with a really positive impact that will feed back into bricks and mortar schools as well, another topic that we'll be looking at. And I know that lots of schools have dipped their toes into online education over the course of the pandemic. There's been a huge acceleration of growth in this sector. It was something of a niche a few years ago, and now it is an area both of growth, but one of the exciting spaces where we really are pushing the forefront of education. So I look forward to hearing more from our panelists who'll be sharing insights with you into their schools. We'll start off with some introductions, and I'll begin by introducing myself. So I'm Heather Rhodes. I'm the founding principal of Harrow School Online, with the world's first academically selective UK curriculum online school. We launched a couple of years ago, which was a few months into the pandemic, but we were very much planned pre-pandemic. With the idea, Harrow School's a very prestigious independent boarding school in the UK, and wanted to launch an online school that would provide the same kind of depth and breadth of education as you would expect from that kind of top independent school, but delivering through an online medium. So I'm going to run around all of our panelists, perhaps if I start with Mark, who's also UK based, to introduce themselves to you and also their schools.
Thanks, Heather. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark O'Donoghue. I'm the Chief Exec of Inspired Schools Online. So we are part of the Inspired Education Group, which is 70 plus premium international schools in over 20 countries around the world. And I run everything that we do that's in the online learning space, online schools. So we have 2 schools, King's Inter High, which I'll talk more about, and then Academy 21, which is UK only. King's Inter High is probably the original online school. It started in 2004-05 as Inter High, and has since grown to be a sort of truly global British curriculum school. We now have thousands of students from many countries around the world, about 85 countries last count, and we have recently launched the world's first fully online IB diploma program. So that's me. Look forward to speaking to you.
Great, thank you. And then John Lewis, so the CEO and founder of IVA Global.
Thank you so much, Heather. My name is John Louis, and I'm the CEO founder of what we like to call IVA. We have students, as like other online schools are finding, you have students from around the world. We have representation currently after just a year and a bit of being in existence across about 26 countries. We decided that IVA transcended well across countries in terms of just a simple name. We've been in existence for a year and a bit, and we offer both the British curriculum and we offer the South African CAPS through what we call the Independent Examinations Board in South Africa. We're excited about this new space. It brings to us a whole lot of new concepts that we haven't really had an opportunity to explore in quite a bit of depth previously, and I'm excited to share some of this during our session today. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. And so IVA School, I'll make note of that one. And then we've got Her Marie, who is also based in South Africa.
Yes, thanks, Heather. I'm Henry. I'm from Evolve Online School, online school in South Africa. We're part of the EDUtech School Group. It's the biggest education provider in Africa. And the school started at the beginning of 2021. Planning started just before COVID hit. We offer the CAPS curriculum, the South African curriculum in South Africa, also the IEB, the Independent Board Examination for our students. We offer grade R to 12. And we follow a mastery-based approach. So very, very looking forward to a lot of interaction today from our audience as well. Thank you.
Great, and I should say, if you ask any questions, we will try and get back to them either through the course of our discussion, or at the end we'll save some space for questions. So do feel free to put them into the chat. Hussein, from a school based in India with students across the world, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Heather, so much. And so, my this profile is a little different compared to, all the eminent dignitaries that we have. I'm basically the CEO of Crimson Education. So we are running 26 brick and mortar schools across India. And also just last year, we set up India's first, South Asia's first hybrid school. That's GIRS Hybrid. So I'm the founder and executive principal of that. And I'll share some thoughts on the hybrid model of education as we go along. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then Santosh, also based in India, 21K School.
Thank you, Heather. So I'm the CEO of 21K School. So we predominantly run Indian, British and American curriculum, 3 curriculums, and we have close to 5,000 students from 38 countries. So we started back in 2019, well before COVID, and now we have grown to a community of 5,000 students. And I'm looking forward for this discussion.
So I think all of us have managed to mention the pandemic at some point in our introductions, if just by placing our school as in comparison to when the pandemic came around. And of course, online schooling, one of the reasons it's such a dynamic area is it's so new. So many schools have launched fairly recently. So I'm interested in the pandemic as a catalyst for online education. I think most of us, if not all of us, had plans for our schools, or our schools were running pre-pandemic. But the pandemic, I mean, certainly for us, we found that it has changed, well, both expedited growth, but perhaps more importantly, changed customer mindset, changed people's understanding and awareness of online schooling. I'm going to perhaps start with Mark, because Interhigh is the, or King's Interhigh is the school that's the oldest of all of them here. And so the pandemic for you was a catalyst, perhaps, rather than something that you were dealing with in your founding or founding years. Interested to know how it impacted the school and what differences you've seen since the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in our 17th year now, so we started at a time when broadband, internet speed was something that was not exactly as widespread as it is now in many markets. So the evolution of our online learning has been significant over that period of time, and as you say, COVID just provided a massive accelerator. Initially, I think just because people needed an alternative, and if you were already there with an established alternative, then we saw increases instead of sort of very healthy double-digit increases year on year. We saw multiples of the school growing over that period of time. But actually, I think that aside, which is sort of a slightly obvious statement, I think the perceptions that people have of online school are a bit more nuanced. Some people probably had an appalling experience of online learning during the course of the pandemic, and their expectation of what online learning can deliver is set by things like being sent a printout PDF of a Roman soldier for their child to colour in. That's really not online learning. Those of us who have been running schools during that period are offering something very different. We're offering a full online school experience supporting the whole child. And we, as I'm sure all of us will talk about over the course of this panel, use sophisticated learning pedagogy and well-developed education technology in order to be able to provide a really compelling experience. And I think probably more people during the pandemic have recognized that that's what's possible in an online school than those who got the PDF of a Roman soldier. And as a result, I think online school has gone from being something really quite niche to something that is in a growing number of people's consideration set. It doesn't mean that it's mainstream yet, but it's growing in terms of the number of people who have it as an option.
I think my daughter's got that PDF of a Roman soldier to colour in as well, very sadly. Hussein, I'm interested in how the pandemic was for your schools, given that you've got a hybrid model.
Right. So Heather, basically, when we started off in India, I think when we look at the landscape of online education, schools or the K-12 sector has been, when we talk of technology, it's predominantly been more the hardware side of things. So if I have a smart board, that's, I'm a tech savvy school, but not in terms of incorporating technology in the pedagogy or how I can make an immersive learning experience for students. Also, K-12 has relatively not used online absolutely besides the hardware, but we've got digital universities now in India. The great part is in the pandemic, we had the national education policy in India, which came after almost 3.5 decades, which is looking at revamping the entire education sector. And I think that became one catalyst. The second catalyst was the pandemic, where initially a lot of schools struggled because they used a similar approach. What I use in a brick and mortar school, I use a similar approach in the online. And I think that's where a lot of work still needs to be done in terms of, the pedagogy. How can we create that immersive experience? Also, as I'd mentioned in the opening, we are running 26 brick and mortar schools in India. And listening to feedback from different stakeholders, one area that we did realize was that online can be great in terms of the academic subjects, but when we look at the holistic all-round development, there needs to be some face-to-face or physical experiences that the child needs to provide. And that's where in 2021 three of us came up with this new model called the hybrid learning education model. The idea of that was combining the best of both worlds, taking all the learnings, how can we enhance the experience online, and also providing them some experiences at a neighborhood school in the city where the child is coming from. So it helped us because we have presence in all these geographies in India. So those schools become our home campus centers. So once in a week, a child who's doing online learning can go to a home campus center for sports, community service projects, extracurricular programs, and to balance that, because that was something which a lot of parents here locally were looking at. So that entire model, this new age model of hybrid, evolved from the learning of the pandemic, listening to what our stakeholders. So we have a community of more than 16,000 children. So we regularly take a lot of feedback from them, and that's how this entire model evolved in the pandemic.
It's really interesting to hear how the pandemic actually shaped your hybrid school in that case, that it was born from those experiences. So I always look for positives to come out of the pandemic, because I think all of us went through such a difficult time collectively across the globe. So it's nice to feel that there are some positive things that have come out of it. Santosh, how does that compare to your experience? Because I think you're 100% online delivery. Is that right?
Yes. So we started with a very typical problem in India. Like, we wanted to set up a good school in remote place. So what we realized that though you spend a couple of crores, but good quality teachers are not ready to travel. Then we found this issue in 2019, and we started working on solution. I went around and met a couple of online schools and got an interaction, and I realized that in India nobody has tried this. Getting good quality teachers to remotest part of the country is only possible through online, and that's where we launched in 2019. And after that, we realized that we thought that it's a good thing for our own schooling kid. But over a period of time, we found a lot of use cases like traveling parents who live in tier 3, tier 4 cities, tier 2 cities where they don't have good infrastructure school. In terms of infrastructure, I mean the teachers, because a school is nothing without a teacher. And every teacher is settled in top cities, like they are not coming out of metro cities. So that's where we took this concept, and now we have expanded globally also, because for us word of mouth mattered, because we created a pedagogy along the complete online learning. We follow something called as flip learning. It's completely project and experiential learning model which we follow. So, and with this and the personalized learning approach, a lot of parents found the utility of being a fully online school, and it spread like, wildfire. So most of our admissions happen on word of mouth. And I think online is going to transform the way we learn. Like there are huge, like there is a big problem. If UN report says that 45% of world's population out of 1.4 billion school going kids are not having enough literacy. And to achieve, or to educate these people, I feel the model which will work is an online schooling model only, because you can't get good quality teachers to travel to all those remote places and just educate them. And online will evolve into a very big mainstream schools in next 1 or 2 years, because what was required was internet and hardware. I think that's available with everyone in every nook and corner of the world right now. I think the situation will change drastically in next 2 years. Pandemic was just a catalyst to accelerate. Maybe what should have happened after 5 to 8 years is going to happen in next 2 to 3 years. That's how I feel about online schools.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, you've touched on some of the reasons for learning in digital schools that I'm sure are common to all of our schools. The parents who wish to travel during the course of education. It's so much more common nowadays to need to travel for work. And in the past, the solution was always a boarding school, but that doesn't suit all budgets, but also doesn't suit all children. And then the availability of teachers, good teachers are, a really valuable commodity. They are what makes education, and you're not going to find good teachers in every village, every town across the world. And homeschooling, as you said, was already a trend in India. So I'm interested. We'll look a little bit further at who learns in your schools in a moment. Interested in hearing from Hermarie and John Louis about your experiences in South Africa. Perhaps, Hermarie, if we start off with you, you'd kind of planned pre-pandemic and launched mid-pandemic, which is very similar to us at Harrow School Online. So I'd be interested to hear how the pandemic changed your plans, if it did, or how you found whether you found students were signing up to study with you because of the pandemic as a driver, or because of the reasons that you had already expected to be able to find students wanting to study online.
Thanks, Heather. So for us, coming into this market was very much focused on the traditional homeschooling market, offering an online curriculum to them. And then it was the whole COVID broke. And that definitely drove a lot of students that previously wouldn't have considered online schooling as an option to the school. And we do still see that we have a churn of students that's coming in, that perhaps hiding a bit, less at the moment, and then going back to brick and mortar as they were just looking for that interim place to stay. And that's not really the market that we're after, but it's a result of COVID, definitely a situation that we had. And with COVID as well, a lot of opportunity opened up in the market in South Africa. So we saw a lot of competitors, us being one of them as well, a new competitor popping up, a lot of competitors coming into the market, offering it. So parents had a wide variety to choose from curriculum, different curriculum, British curriculum, CAPS, where they could choose IB or the National Senior Certificate, the GED. So there's a lot of options that opened up for parents. And I think that's one of the main things that definitely was a benefit. And Mark mentioned this as well, is that it opened up the conversation, that there is an alternative. It could have been a bad experience that they might have had going on to online learning from their traditional school, but that's where our responsibility comes in as disruptors, if we want to see ourselves that way, where we have to educate the market as to the different options that are available to them, because there are a lot of options available, from your traditional school behind the screen to online school that really embraces technology and uses it to enhance the learning of our students.
I'm really interested how a few of you have mentioned the pedagogy being just incredibly important to get right for an online school, and I think that's definitely a topic we need to explore a bit more. John Louis, how has the pandemic impacted your school, and would you say it's been a game changer for you, or more of an accelerator of what was already happening?
Heather, it definitely was an accelerator of more that was happening. And IVA came about out of the fascination of two things. One, the whole idea of global citizenship and a global classroom. What does it mean when you've got children from all over the world in one space? And unless you had, like Harrow, amazing boarding facilities, recruiting students from around the world, by large, this opportunity was not available to children around the world. And so this was a first opportunity to have children from around the world sitting in a classroom, the whole cultural difference aspect, the whole global citizenship. And that is a fascination that is still on my mind at the moment in terms of how we work that classroom. You can't take a local context. In South Africa, our underground is referred to as the Gautrain. If we talk about the Gautrain, but we've got kids sitting in Malaysia, you know, what does that mean? So we've had to really think very hard about the engagement of the children. That was the one aspect. And then the other aspect was, I don't know any child that's not a gamer. And I was intrigued by trying to understand how we bring education into that world. And so that's why we brought in a heavy focus on esports into our school. And we've also brought in a 3D virtual world, which we call the Isle of Iva, into our engagement as well. So those two things were really key for me in terms of really taking what we're doing in a traditional space and just trying to understand the new opportunities available to us.
Sounds incredibly exciting. And one of the things I love about online learning is that the ability to gamify learning, so it becomes fun and competitive and all of those things that kids love. They love that in their free time. Surely they can love that in their education as well. So that crossover between games and education is just a really promising, exciting space. We've had quite a few reasons now why people are joining online schools. Mark, I wonder if you've got any to add. So we've talked about parents who travel. We've talked about the shortage of good teachers in any local area. Parents who were perhaps homeschooling anyway, wanting to have the additional support of an online school. What other types of use case do you see at King's Inter High?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I sort of refer to the audience or audiences for an online school as an aggregation of niches. There's not one single profile that works for recruiting for or choosing an online school. Everyone has their own individual reasons. So yeah, as you said, globally mobile families who want to be able to provide a consistent academic education rather than uprooting their child year in, year out. There's also a profile which is quite glamorous but not necessarily that large, which is you know, kids who are following a dream. You know, they may be on a pathway to elite sport, or budding actors or actresses, budding entrepreneurs, and these are essentially children who need to be able to arrange their education around their other commitments rather than vice versa. Then there's you know, the teacher supply issue is sort of, I guess, writ more largely in a whole profile of kids who don't have access locally to a high quality international education, either because there aren't any international schools in their locality, or they can't afford or can't get into the schools that are available. So there's a big growing profile that's particularly prevalent in Asia. And some other parts of the world as well. And then I think the largest group is an aggregation of niches of itself, which is, I sort of label it as kids for whom a mainstream school just doesn't work for whatever reason. And that might be that they're highly gifted, and so they want to be able to go faster. It's much easier to go faster as a 12-year-old, where you're not sat in the same physical classroom as 15-year-olds. And so online provides a safer, more secure route to be able to go faster. And then you also have kids with, you know, there's an unfortunate wall of sort of anxiety and mental health issues amongst the children coming through our schools at the moment, and an online school can work much better for them. Children who may have experienced unfortunate environmental issues such as bullying in their mainstream physical school, or kids who are just easily distracted in the hurly-burly of a physical school. And so there's a huge set of niches in that sort of category as well. And the challenge for any of us as online school providers is to make sure that you're able to cater for the needs of many niches. You have to have a consistent approach to the way that you deliver your education, but accept that the routes to study and the modes of study for particular children will be different, and they inevitably will be more flexible than they might be in a physical school.
I think that flexibility of online schooling is one of the new dynamics, which I love that to kind of feed back into bricks and mortar schools as well. So the expectation is that students have the chance for perhaps a more individualized pathway through learning. And I mean, the flexibility that an online school can provide in terms of both timetabling, but the pathway of learning for students, and the curriculum that they're following is so it's really helpful to be to have online technology, because that's one of its strengths, one of the things that is it's kind of easier to do online, I would say. I think that additional choice for parents, so that previously you were limited by schools in your local area, unless you had a very large budget for education, which you could consider boarding schools. Now, wherever you are in the world, you have a much larger choice of education through online providers. Just before we move on to talk about what good online providers might look like, what well-designed online learning is like, can I just check whether there are any other kind of key use cases for online schools from any of our other panelists, ones that haven't been mentioned so far?
So Heather, I'd just like to come in here. So one part which we are seeing is, so we are South Asia's first Cambridge affiliated online school. So we are offering only the British curriculum. And as I mentioned, we are right now in our first phase focused on, geographies, 8 geographies within India. So what we are seeing is that the Cambridge curriculum, like Santosh mentioned, getting teachers has always proven to be a big challenge. The other part that we are seeing is Cambridge gives a lot of flexibility in terms of subject choices, especially at the class 9 to class 12, that's the GCSEs and the AS A levels. When we compare that with our Indian national curriculum, we see that up to class 10 students are doing majority of the subjects are the same. So English, math, science is something which is a given, which everyone needs to do. And from class 11, we compartmentalize them into streams. So a student who wants to do psychology with biology, it's not possible in the Indian setup. But with an online school with a Cambridge affiliation, you just give them a lot more flexibility. You do not compartmentalize them into these small kind of streams, but you give them a lot more choices in terms of, and that's what we are seeing a lot of parents are looking at, just having that flexibility and the choice. So it's basically, I'm taking the liberal arts education and, just giving them that choice from class 9 to 12, where they can choose subjects, keeping in mind, what they would like to do, rather than just focusing on a particular stream. So that's one trend that we are seeing increasingly a lot in India.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, John Louis.
Sorry, Heather, if I can just add the fees. We find a lot of parents are comparing fees, and a lot of parents are finding themselves in economic situations where they can't afford the traditional private school fees, and they're looking for other offerings that provide similar quality.
Yeah, so that they get the best out of their buck, that feeling of wanting to prioritize education, but needing to feel that you're getting a good return on that money, that what you're paying for is really worthwhile. I think from what everyone said, I mean, it's very clear that well-designed online learning does look very different to learning in a physical school. If you try and deliver education online in the same manner that you would in a physical school, you get death by Zoom, as I think several students found out during the emergency online provision that was put in place for the pandemic. And there are some innate advantages in online learning. So we've touched on the flexible structure, we've touched on the individualization of learning. There's the smart use of data, which I'm sure is going on in all of our schools. So there's a question in that is quite timely about the delivery of the education within your school. Are all of your classes done synchronously, or are they asynchronous in some way? And the question was asked in relation to the students in different time zones, which of course is a challenge that a bricks and mortar school would not have to deal with normally. So I'm interested in knowing what the provision of each of your schools looks like. In particular, how is it different from a physical school? How do you play to those innate advantages of online education, and how do you manage that balance between synchronous and asynchronous lessons? Maybe Hermarie, if we start with you for this question, if I could.
So I know every school has a different weight as to how they split their synchronous and asynchronous. For Evolve Online, we've split it 20% synchronous and 80% asynchronous. So there is that flexibility to go and work at your own pace, work on content, take it slower, work faster, and already master the content, be able to stop and focus on a specific part. So for us, that helps with the time schedules as well, because everything is not 100% synchronous at the same time. And that obviously gives us the opportunity as well to engage our students in other time slots as well. So it's not just live lessons. We do offer those live lessons during our synchronous sessions. Those lessons are recorded, so if a student misses it, they can always just catch up. But there's also interaction where they can contact their teachers one-on-one later on, at a time that's more convenient to them. So that's how we handle synchronous and asynchronous.
Santosh, how about 21K? What's your take on asynchronous and synchronous, and how is your provision different to a physical school?
So we are 80% synchronous. We have multiple batches which runs, like a morning batch and afternoon batch, so that we are able to take care of the time zones in Asia, Middle East and Southeast Asia in particular. And we are also introducing time, classes across the time zone. So we have a synchronous class of 3 to 4 hours based on the grades which we are offering. And then we have like 20% of asynchronous component, which actually students go through after the classes. And ours is mostly a project-based flipped learning. So a real interaction between a teacher and student is very important. So we operate in a class size of 20, like 20 students who always travel like a normal school with a particular teachers and a set of teachers. So synchronous learning plays an important part into our complete school's pedagogy. So that's why we keep it 80% synchronous and 20% synchronous. With that, what happens is students, that emotional feeling or that connect which every student wants as a part of the school, we are able to give it. And with the advent of technology, it will actually keep on increasing in terms of that connect.
Mark, I think you're fairly similar to Santosh, aren't you? That the bulk of the content delivery is through live sessions.
Yeah, our pedagogy is founded on a belief that you get a higher quality of learning and a higher quality engagement, and you can deepen learning through live interaction over asynchronous. But there is a role for both. And the reason we lead with live is you get a higher quality of engagement between a live teacher and a live student than you do asynchronously, but you also get the benefit of peer learning. I will learn as much from the questions that are asked by my peers and my engagement with my peers as I will from the instruction that comes from the teacher. So we are led by live, but as with all of us, we have great flexibility, and we use an awful lot of designed asynchronous interventions that are then woven into the live class schedule. I think the other thing that I would add is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer across the year groups. So we run in UK school years from year 3 to year 13, so grade 2 to grade 12 in the American system. And it is different at different age groups. You know, any parent who tried to marshal the activities of a 7-year-old during lockdown will recognize that the independence and discipline are not there at that age. You know, you are effectively supporting homeschooling at that age. I'm terribly sorry, I have an environmentally friendly office, and so the light sometimes switches itself off in order to be able to save the planet, but not help if I'm presenting on something like this. So yeah, at age 7, you know, the discipline and the schedule and the support is necessary. An asynchronous model, I do not believe, would work. Whereas the further up the grades you get, then the more independence students have, the more self-motivation they may have, and the more capability for independent study, and therefore you can use asynchronous interventions in different ways.
Yeah, flipped learning with a 7-year-old is always going to be either a struggle or require an awful lot of parental intervention, isn't it?
Absolutely.
John Louis, how do you structure your provision, and what are the differences between your online provision and what you would expect at a bricks and mortar?
We're also a fully synchronized live lesson structured timetable school. And we find that in the online space, compared to the traditional space, certainly in South Africa, the traditional schools, there is no time wasted. There is nobody that has to travel from home to school. So if we need to support a child, or if a child messages us, it's instant. The reply, everything is instant. There is no delay because we've now got a negotiated time when we can meet for an extra session or something like that. The one thing that you spoke about with the time zones, and so we have 4 students in Australia, and we're based in South Africa. And those students start at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and finish later. And when you talk to them, they're quite excited about the fact that their schooling happens in the afternoon and not first thing in the morning. And there is some, people keep telling me that there's some research that shows that teenagers do perform better later in the day rather than early in the morning. So we are operating, we've got a child as young as grade 3 in Malaysia that also starts school at 12. And so those time zones are extreme. But somehow it's just a change in mindset that you're still going to get through the school day. It's just going to be at a different time of the day. And the one thing that we are very different and we do stand out is our virtual world. You know, all of our teachers and all of our students, for approximately 20 to 25% of our lessons, are avatars in a 3D virtual world. It's a lot of fun. You know, our posters on the wall are interactive, so we get the kids moving and they go to a poster and they click on it and there is something for them to do. We can change venues instantly. We can change furniture instantly. So it just brings a very different dynamic to the space you're in as compared to the traditional space.
Love the idea of interactive posters on the walls. Sounds incredibly interesting. Hussein, over to you. How do I mean, you have both the day in a physical school along with the 4 days, I presume, online learning. How does the online structure differ to what you do in the physical school?
So the online structure would be completely synchronous. It's only live classes. In the first phase, we are only looking at students from within India. So the time zone is very easy for us to manage, you know, as an online, as a hybrid school. So currently our schedules run, and we've fixed 2 days in the week. Depending, so certain schools would like an offline on a Saturday and some on a Wednesday. So we've structured our timetable keeping that aspect in mind. And so all the academic classes happen in the online Monday to Friday. And on the other 2 days of the week, depending on what the home campus, so we call the network of schools where the child goes once a week as a home campus. So there again, there would be a timetable where the student would go for sports activities, etc., for between 2 to 3 hours, and that campus would be something a place which is actually close to the residence of the student. So that's how we've looked at, and that's the reason we have only targeted 8 geographies in the country in the first phase.
And I think in comparison, in our first year at Harrow School Online, we had students from ranging from Australia through to the US. So we had the whole raft of time zones. We have, we're a sixth form school, so for us, we use flipped learning as our pedagogy, which means our students are working through interactive self-study materials. We get a lot of data from those materials that then feeds into the teaching that goes on in the live lessons. And the time, because obviously our teachers with the asynchronous content aren't needing to teach the content delivery as you would in a traditional school. So our teachers' time then becomes available for one-to-one support with students, which means that a student can get as much or as little support with each topic or each A-level that they're taking as is appropriate for them. And with the time zone, some of our lessons are in the morning, 8 till 10, others are in the afternoon for us in the UK, 2 till 4. That just about catches all of the time zones. With our students who are in Asia tend to work through their self-study materials in the morning and then have their live lessons, with the reverse over for our students who are in the US or over towards that direction at least. Now the thing that really excites me about online learning is that we're often at the forefront of digital innovation. We're trying new things, using technology in new ways to change the way that students learn and to try and make the experience more engaging and memorable for them. And that individualization and flexibility as well often plays into this. So I'm interested to know what's new for you in your schools in terms of digital innovation, or perhaps what's coming up next. What do you see as the next steps for your school? So Santosh, maybe if we could start with you for that question.
Thank you, Heather. I think this is the most exciting topic for the discussion, for me at least. You know, we being a bunch of tech guys, right? We always talk about innovation. We were successfully, bringing up the personalized learning through, developing an AI, which actually captures everybody's, demography, the teaching lessons, the emotions during the classes and everything. And we have personalized the learning journey of a kid to a level, and we are able to predict the journey also, like next 1 or 2 months, how the kids will be. And that's how the classes are designed. Going forward, what we decided is the next big thing in technology is Web3. How do we actually transform our school into a Web3 school? And we have started building the metaverse around it. So Web3 predominantly consists of a blockchain layer, wherein we are giving a digital identity for the students in terms of their mark sheet, their accomplishment, anything what they do in school is available in a blockchain ledger. And secondly, we are going to teach them to create their own avatars, own digital identity inside our metaverse. So this metaverse also we are expanding to a very big level, geotagged to a particular locations. So it's just like that, you just think of a student coming inside a game. Why students get so addicted to PUBG or these kind of games. It's very interactive. It rewards you. You get coins, or you get to go to next levels. So some different kind of this kind of gamified metaverse is something which we are building, and we hope to have the first launch, like beta is running, first launch by August or September, and we are going to expand it globally on a very faster scale. So Web3 is going to play a very predominant role in terms of increasing the engagement. One part which a lot of people actually have a complaint for an online learning is the social emotional connect. I think being part of Web3 ecosystem and a metaverse ecosystem will remove that part of social, like emotional connect altogether. So that as a school we are doing, and Mark has already launched a virtual school, but for us we are launching it next year by March. So we are going to launch a complete cohort which will completely run on goggles like Oculus or Pico. So yeah, Inter was first, and we are happy that we are joining the race. But yeah, that's the next big innovation which is coming up. And obviously AI is going to play a predominant role in personalizing the learning. The way the jobs are changing in today's days, 10 years down the line, we don't know how the students are going to be, but the kind of jobs it is going to be. But AI, the way we personalize, we allow them to be more creative, we allow them, give them more time to be innovative, come up with design thinking solutions, teach them blockchain, teach them metaverse, teach them all these future life skills during as part of curriculum. When we do that, we can actually create future citizens, and as a complete global citizen. So I think being an online school, gives us that flexibility to source really good quality teachers and implement that kind of pedagogy across the world. So I feel this is going to be the next big technological innovation, and we are cut through into that particular part, and that's what we as a 21K school are passionate about.
Mark, I believe you're recently in the metaverse. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are two big themes for us, and they're the same that Santosh was talking about. One is virtual reality, and one is the use of artificial intelligence. So if I start with the virtual reality piece, we've been experimenting with different applications of virtual reality for about 12 to 18 months now. And that led us to the recent launch of a school in the metaverse, using one of our physical schools as the imprint, if you like, and then building out different learning interventions within that school that they can then be used across the entire Inspired network, not just by King's Inter High. At King's Inter High, the experimentation that we've been doing, if you say virtual reality to people, they sort of think it's slightly gimmicky. But the Christmas present of choice for many people was an Oculus Quest 2 headset. So it's moving beyond sort of gimmicky out there tech to something that's a bit more mainstream as far as kids are concerned from a gaming perspective. From a learning perspective, what one has to do is to find the ways in which you are either deepening learning, or you are, in our virtual school, finding a way to be able to deliver something that in the practical physical world is easier. So deepening learning, an example might be, we've created a way to be able to live as Anne Frank in the attic. For those who don't know, Anne Frank's Diary is a book written by a Dutch girl who lived in the top of her house for almost the entirety of the Second World War, whilst the Nazis were below her. And so rather than just read the book and discuss her experiences, our students have sort of had a virtual reality experience of living as Anne Frank did, hearing the floorboards creak below. And what's really interesting about it is it just completely enriches the discussion that you get with the students around what that must have been like and how did Anne Frank feel. And it really does, beyond what's possible in a physical classroom, deepen the experience. So that's part one. Part two is replacing things that it's just hard to do in the virtual world when you haven't got a sheep's heart there to be able to dissect. My son does A-level biology and came home saying, I've just been dissecting a sheep's heart, Dad, and I've really no idea how the aorta connects to the superior vena cava and all these sorts of things. So we got the Oculus Quest 2 on and were able to blow up a heart to human size, and I mean as in a whole human, not the size of a human heart, to be able to see inside how those things connect. So virtual reality can replace and extend learning. So lots of stuff, and actually the International Baccalaureate Diploma, fully online version that we just launched, is based on the use of VR in a whole range of different ways. I personally don't think that an entirely VR experience is the right way to take things. It has a place in the learning setup that's really important, but finding the right interventions is the key to it. And then the second bit, artificial intelligence. I think Santosh has sort of articulated what everyone's aiming for with personalized adaptive learning. You've got to have a lot of data in order to be able to make that work. It's easy to say and hard to do. At Inspired, we have the benefit of 60,000 students across our schools. And so we've created something called Inspired AI, which is basically a common platform used across all of the schools so that we are throwing a lot of data at the algorithm in order to be able to improve it over time. And we're already seeing that students who engage with nuggets of learning on the artificial intelligence platform are studying further for longer and achieving better outcomes as a result of the personalization that's getting built into the system.
Super exciting. I think all new tech is gimmicky until it suddenly isn't anymore, and everybody wants to have their hands on it. John Louis, you've spoken about your students having avatars, meeting in a virtual space. How is that working for you? You've said I think 30% of your school time is spent in that space. Is that right? What's next?
Thank you. We like to diversify, and we like to see their faces as well for the majority of time. And in the avatar world, you don't see their faces, but they do get to express themselves in the way that they dress their avatars and that sort of thing. It's going very well, and the kids really do enjoy the avatar space. Specifically from what we call grade 4 to grade 9, so that you would be looking at about 10-year-olds to 13, 14-year-olds, they really enjoy that space. The much older students that are about to exit the school system are more focused on, please, can you just give us the most amazing teachers and facilitators of our learning, and let us get through this in the best possible way and ensure that the results we get are let's work in a way that optimizes our results. And then the very little ones, they're too little to go into. Well, that's my perspective, but we are being pushed to try new things there. So yeah, as Mark said, virtual reality is not going away. It's here to stay, and we're all trying to explore it and trying to understand what the next step is. One of the things that was surprising for me, though, that came out of student voice was the sense of belonging and the sense of community. So when we started our school, we didn't have lots of online social programs. We didn't have inter-house activities. One of the inter-house things is a traditional thing, the red, blue, green color house things, which I was not really excited about. But the student voice said, no, we want this. So we have things like inter-house Wordles and I don't know if you know what Wordle is, you can look it up, inter-house. We have inter-house snakes and ladders. We have inter-house, a whole lot of different, but all of that only because they want to belong. And owning that virtual school was amazing because we called it the Isle of Iva, and it gave the children a home. Even though they were avatars going to this place, it gave them a home as opposed to just logging into a Zoom or something like that. So that is the one thing. That's why we've got a very big social program that we're focusing on that is online, beyond the excellent work that we do with the academics. So that was an aspect that hasn't been mentioned that was surprising to me, and that we've had to develop quite extensively over the last couple of months.
I think Harrow School Online is very similar in that the community aspect of our school is incredibly important to us. We had we have a house system. Our house Christmas video competition was probably the most hotly contested competition of the year. That sense of engagement of students, giving them the ability to step into leadership roles, having a student council so that student voice is regularly heard, having student-led clubs and societies that are geared to areas that they're of interest that they want to get involved with. I think all of those things can make an education feel like a school rather than a set of kind of academic steps that are required to achieve a particular qualification at the end. I think that ties in quite nicely to one of the questions that we've had in actually, which is about the 21st century holistic skills and how you afford the opportunity for students to develop those within your school. I would have thought for most of us it's that community aspect that allows us to help students develop those skills. Hermarie, I'm interested in what's new or what's next for you in terms of digital innovation.
Thanks, Heather. So I think everybody has mentioned this as well, but the use of data is incredibly important, and it really adds to the richness of the product that you're offering, and really is the foundation of offering a personalized learning path for students. And so what we've developed is we've mapped our content according, and we use the MIT's cross-links mapping system to map the content from grade R to grade 12, everything that a student would need to learn, every single subject, what information comes before, what information comes after, to exactly know what's that progress that they have to make. And that is then feeding into a live report system that our parents and students and teachers have access to. So every student, it's not just about showing a mark or a combination of things. It's really, you can go down into the little nitty-gritty of every single subject, the themes, the topics, the different elements that they need to master in order for them to move on to the next level. And that's a live report. When students submit material for assessment within 48 hours, it's assessed, the master is uploaded, and there's a lot of gratification for the students in that. They can immediately see, are they making progress? Where do they have to work harder? They don't have to rehash the entire year's work. Focus on the areas where they really have not mastered it yet, and that helps us to make sure that there's no gap in the knowledge as they move to the next phase, the next grade, that they can really hone in on the specific elements where they need to pay attention. And that's very exciting from the teacher's perspective as well. That really allows you to individualize the interventions for every single student as to where they need it. So it allows you to say, only these 4 students join me for a group class. Or let's have a group discussion with these 5 students on this specific topic, because you can see perhaps where there's some intervention needed. And with our senior phase, we use the Harkness table method when discussing content. And with technology at your fingertips, we can tell whether a student has prepared for a class, flipped classroom, prepared for a class before they come into the class. If they haven't, they can't contribute necessarily to the discussion, or they might if they have some basic knowledge, but to the discussion. And that allows you to have a discussion and say, you're not prepared for the class, join us next session. And that's insights that really makes the interaction rich and purposeful.
There's no dog ate my homework excuse in an online school. That visibility of learning is something that is incredibly useful for teachers, for students themselves, for their parents. And I think one of the areas where classroom bricks and mortar based schools will also be able to go, because the same data collection and a smart use of data to inform teaching and ability to track learning and make that visible at all times to students and parents is something that doesn't have to be online specific. So Hussein, over to you. You've only got a couple of minutes left, but I'm interested to know how you're going with this with your hybrid learning and what's going to be.
So I think a lot of ideas which each of the panelists has touched upon. I think one key part which we've realized with hybrid is parental engagement, keeping parents informed. And how do we use the data so that parents have a complete overview of their child's learning? So that's something where we are doing a lot of work, and still a lot of work needs to continue to happen so that they get the same comfort that they would get in a brick and mortar structure. The other part, what we've developed on our learning management system is something called Chatter. So Chatter is like a Facebook, but it's a close-knit community for that particular class. So children and teachers outside class time can interact. If there is some question on an assignment, it becomes a close-knit community. Parents can also, and there are different moderation settings. So I think that's something which we are really excited by in terms of the kind of prospects, just to ensure that the social emotional learning, the connect that they actually have in a physical world, to an extent, we can replicate that in a virtual setup as well.
Thank you so much for a full but succinct answer. Which,
yes, I was just mindful of the time. Yes.
It's been incredibly interesting hearing everyone's experiences at your schools, what you're doing, who your students are, how your learning is structured, and where you hope that learning might develop with the future developments in technology. Really interesting for me as a leader of an online school to hear what others are doing in the same space, and I hope it's been interesting to our audience as well, whether you're working in online schooling or in a bricks and mortar school but are interested to know what's going on in the world of online schooling. And my hope is that what we're doing within online schooling can have a positive impact on education as a whole. And I think everyone's in this business to try and change lives for the better. Let's hope that we can do that. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the audience for listening. And I believe I'm handing back to Shamala to wrap up for us.
Thank you, Heather, for moderating this session. And thank you to our panelists, Hamari, Hussein, John, Mark, and Santosh for this great discussion. I've certainly learned a lot from this session, and I'm sure our audience have as well. Stay tuned for our next session, which will happen in a bit. Take care, everyone. Bye.